Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another episode of the Crossworld Cast. So you guys really seem to like this video when we did it last week, so we're here to do another episode. And this time I've got two different teammates with me, but first, I hope you guys had a really good holiday. However you guys decided to spend it, hope you guys had a good time. So here today we have Big J, who is our first ever national DBS champion, as well as managing to snag third place at the most recent North American Nationals. And then we have Danny. So in the Fortnite corner,
Come on, man.
in the Fortnite corner, we have Jordan. So I'll let Jordan just like intro himself real quick.
My name is Jordan Markle. Joey kind of already put up, like my accolades and stuff. Tons of tops here and there. Yeah, I mean that's pretty much it, man.
All right, Danny, take it away.
I've done a little thing here and there, Super Shenron, something like that. Top 16 first Nats. Yeah, and I'm Danny Nguyen.
Yeah, and he likes to take my decks and take credit for them, but that's okay. So
Yeah, whatever.
all right, so today for the Crossword Cast, we have a topic to discuss, one that I'm actually very, very interested in. So basically, the thing I want to talk about today is this idea of reverse power creep. Now, I feel like for a long, long time, and really it happens in all card games, people complain about power creep, but in a lot of ways, it's just the natural progression of a game. Like, eventually the cards have to get stronger, they have to get more interesting, stuff like that. But it really feels like with a Unison Warrior block that we've been experiencing this type of like reverse power creep. It seems like the sets and the cards have actually gotten weaker. And don't get me wrong, there are many home run cards like in set 15, like Turles All Too Easy, like is a good example of just like a really strong card, but like the archetypes and the decks aren't that crazy. And just to kind of like support my claim a little bit, I jotted down some information. So for North American Nationals, the most current deck that topped was set 13 King Cold, right? So that was the most, like, considering that we were up to set 15 at that time, set 13 was the most recent thing to make one top cut slot. And then there was some set 12 and a lot of set 11, even some set 9. And then for Worlds, a set 12 deck, Gogeta Xeno, was the most like up to date deck to top. And we even had, a set 6, I believe, starter deck make top 4, right? So this idea of like reverse power creep, things getting weaker. So firstly, the first question I want to ask you guys, I'll go to Danny first. Do you agree with this premise or do you disagree, and why?
Yo, what about set 1 Golden Frieza, man?
Yeah, that's another good one. Yeah, I'm going all the way
Yo,
back to
what
set
the
1.
heck? Disrespecting the boy.
Yeah,
I
but you
mean,
get the
yeah,
point.
it's just it's all leader based, right? Everything is all about the leader at the end of the day. They're just generic effects that are just really powerful with a combination of cards, right?
So is that an agreement or disagreement?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, cool. All right, Big J, agree, disagree, or why?
So I'll go a little bit more in depth. So, I think that what they're doing is fine to an extent. I think that they needed to reduce the power creep a bit from where it was earlier on in the Unison Warrior block to the end, because the beginning was just like so out of hand. So, I just think that they needed to do that while also, creating like the ban list and stuff, like increasing like the amount of cards being banned or errated, to get the game more on balance to like a point where they don't have to, like where when they make cards, they're actually like on the same power level instead of being super like power creeped or like super underpowered. So I do agree with them doing it. And I think it's gonna like make the game balance out in the long run.
Yeah, so that actually leads us perfectly into my next question, which you already kind of answered. So my next thought was like, when did this like quote unquote reverse power creep happen? And I think it really came in two places. I think Bandai really realized that Surge leaders, especially like Surge Goku and Surge Piccolo, and maybe like Invoker to an extent, were just like really insane steps in terms of like power creep. They were just like crazy strong leaders. So I feel like that's one point where they kind of realized like, okay, we got to kind of scale things back a little bit. And then like the set 11 era with like, I believe that's when Dark Broly came out. And then before that we had Vegex and just a lot of really powerful decks in set 11. I think they also kind of realized, like, for example, Dark Broly, how do we ever top Dark Broly, right? Like that just would be insane power creep. So I think like set 9 with Surge and set 11 are like the really big eras of where they kind of realize like, okay, we should probably scale things back a bit. Jordan, where do you think you saw like the maximum spike of like power, if you know what I mean.
So I mean, I'm gonna go a little bit further back if that's cool.
Yeah, do your thing.
Not too much further back, but go back to set 7. I think it's Salt of the Sands. I think set 7 was a very good set. Not to get too off topic, but like it introduced like counterplays. It introduced a lot of good things, to make the game like I think more skill dependent. Um, and right after that set, which I think set 7 was a pretty good format. Right after that, we got like 7.5 was going into Nats meta with Draft Box 4. Um, and I think Draft Box 4, while maybe not all the cards in Draft Box 4 were super like over power crept, I think a lot of them were. And I think that's where the power creep started. And I think where you said around set 9 with the Surge leaders is kind of where they realized that if they keep going down this path of creating cards like this powerful, like the game's just gonna like become way too fast and like more so like Yu-Gi-Oh maybe just super fast and not enough like interaction and stuff. And like then they started to go down to where like, we need to scale it back a little bit. But it's also tough to do that when in set 10 they're introducing a new card type that completely changes the game. So it was a really tough balancing act, but I think that the kind of where you said around set 9, set 10, and then like, I mean, they still made set 11 and set 12 really powerful, but I think they realized like in between there somewhere that they have to start, slowing it down a little bit or it's just going to get too out of hand.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And you bring up a good point too about like Unison's basically like changing the entire game. So yeah, it's a good question. Like how do you balance like, this surge mechanic with the new Unison mechanic? It is a very interesting balancing act. Danny, what do you think about like the high point of like power in terms of like where Dragon Ball Super's been?
I think there's all been a ton of high points, right? They just keep. I think they're continually learning, and like pretty much every new set, there's gonna be like very niche, cool little cute strategies that they're trying to do. Like, for example, the Flippy Han in the recent set 15.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Like they're just being very careful now, and that kind of like almost just makes sets like archetypes kind of bad sometimes because they're so careful now because they're afraid, right? They're just afraid of like all these crazy formats, tier 0 formats that we've had, like Mecha, Super Shenron, Surge. Like they're just constantly like afraid. It seems like, and then like just those few things that slip through the cracks, just like take over the meta, right?
Yeah, maybe kind of like Mecha Frieza, for example. But you do bring up a good point. Like I get the same feeling that they're like maybe a little bit scared, and I really get that feeling with set 14 and 15 that were just overall like the archetypes in those decks were very very weak. There were certainly like good cards in those sets, but they just kind of contributed to like already established decks, right? Like the biggest disappointment for me, or I guess there's two of them for me. The main one is the Red Goten deck. Like the Red Goten deck, it just feels like there was no creative drive behind that deck. All it does is like boost the leader to like 40k triple strike, and that gets stopped by any negate or blocker in the game. Like it's such a weird deck for them to like center a whole theme around, and it doesn't actually do anything interesting. It almost feels like a super like reverse power crept version of Reboot Gohan to a degree. And the thing you said about Flippy Gohan is also very interesting because it is a pretty cool mechanic, even though we've seen like the flip thing with Launch and the field card thing with King Cold, and it's almost like merging the two. But yeah, I mean, it's like so gimmicky that it ends up falling really flat. So like, I guess my question is, and I'll go to Jordan first, like, I guess in regards to like specifically set 14 and 15 with this like new approach they're taking with these archetypes, like do you like it? Do you dislike it? Do you not have an opinion? Like are you indifferent? Like how do you feel about the way they handled the set 14, 15 archetypes?
Um, I mean, I guess you could say I'm a little bit indifferent, or dislike, one of the two. Because I'll give you 2 points. Like for me, like I'm just like a very hyper competitive player. So like if they make cards that come out that I just don't that aren't good or I don't think are good, I kind of just ignore them for the most part. Um, like I don't really know what some of these decks do. Like I know Danny's talking about the Flipan and the Go. I don't know what a lot of these cards do. So if I play against them, like I just have no clue. So in that respect, I just like don't really care too much. But like on the disagreement side, like I just think that the cards are just super like you said, gimmicky. Like I don't think like decks like that are gonna be good enough. Um Unless they're like it's either one scale or the other. They're either gonna be super overpowered and at what they do, and they're just gonna be like everybody's just gonna play that deck, or they're just gonna be super underpowered and just nobody's gonna play them. Like it's kind of like it's a tough way. It's a tough to balance those type of decks because they're just very unique the way they make them. So
Yeah, it's really weird. Like I think there can be the gimmick, and like the gimmick can be whatever you want, right? Like King Cold, for example, the gimmick is like play a million field cards. But if the field cards say I believe it's like a new ruler or something, it's like when it dies, you pitch one, you draw one. That's like a fine effect. But then if the card said like if it dies, pop your opponent's whole board, that would obviously be like super busted. So I guess like there maybe there's a difference between like the gimmick and like just the power level of the cards within the gimmick. But Danny, I mean, in regards to like set 14, 15, what do you think about the archetypes?
I some of them are just obviously like terrible. We like test them out. I wish like at least Flippyhon they could have just made like one of the field spells like a little bit stronger. At least give it a chance. I feel like sometimes they don't test they don't test these archetypes too much. Like what we do as a team when we like a new set comes out, we just play the archetype against the current strong stuff.
Yep.
And if it can't even, we kind of some people on TV call it the litmus test. If it doesn't pass the litmus test, it's got to go.
yeah.
Yeah, if it can't be the current meta, it's got to go. So I guess like moving from that point, like I generally agree. Like I, I get what Jordan says, because in one aspect, like when you're a hyper competitive player, you don't really care like if the new archetypes are good or bad. You just try to figure it out and you play what you think is the strongest, right? So like for me and Danny, for example, like we were big on Icarus for a long time, so we were just always looking to add cards to Icarus. Like if a new good like yellow card came out or a new good blue yellow card came out, whatever, we would just add it to Icarus, and that's fine. We didn't really care that like Turles in what was it set 14 or 15 like wasn't that good. We didn't really care, right? So that's all well and good. But I do think like this is actually my next question. Like I don't know if this is necessarily sustainable, because like I said earlier, like power creep has just always been in card games. Like Magic, even though it has rotation, like people complain about power creep all the time. Yu-Gi-Oh, they don't have rotation, and they use power creep as like their sort of like form of rotation, right? So I guess the question is like, is it a sustainable thing for the game? And this is not anything in the realm of like, oh, the game's gonna die because set 14 and 15 didn't have powerful archetypes. But I think like over the next like maybe 5-10 sets, can this like reverse power creep model be sustainable? Jordan, what do you think?
I think that it can be sustainable for a little bit. I don't know if I don't know if I would say for like 5 or 6 sets. I mean that's a very long time in the game. Um, I do think that what they're doing, making a few sets, I think they're getting the game back on track. If that makes any sense. Like I think they were too hard on the power creep earlier on. I think they recognize that, and sometimes some people don't understand. It takes a while for this stuff to like even out, and I think they kind of realize that set 11, set 12, and now we're seeing like them like, okay, we need to reduce it a little bit. They're being very proactive with the ban list. I know I keep saying that, but it's just like I think they're doing a good thing with the ban list to make the game more balanced out. And now they just need to like try and produce cards on the same power level that we have now or slightly above. Like slight power creep is good. I think where they went like big margins of power creep, which like that's when we have the problems we had before with like needing like emergency bans and stuff like that. All in all, that's where I feel about that. But like to piggyback off of Danny's point one time, I think he said something about like them like we play test versus like the good decks, like the decks that are already meta, and we play the new decks against them and see how they perform. Um, I'm wondering if there's like a disconnect there where they're playing the decks from the same set against each other and being like, okay, all these decks are
hope not.
balanced, put it into a set, and then like we realize that they're just like not as powerful as the decks previously. So maybe that might be one of the spots where maybe they're messing up a little bit, but I'm not really sure. I'm not gonna like project, but that's something there that you could think on as well.
For sure, yeah, and unfortunately, we have no idea how Bandai decides to test their game. But I will definitely say I like Jordan's point a lot about like minor power creep as opposed to like wide margins of power creep. Because yeah, like if the cards are a little bit stronger every time, that does keep the game more exciting. It does make people want to buy a new product, and at the same time, the game doesn't get out of hand. So that's actually a really good point to bring up. Like, very small marginal power creep versus like, widespread power creep. I think that's a very good point that you definitely don't want to look over. But yeah, Danny, what do you think about like the reverse power creep and like the sustainability of it? Because I do like what Jordan said too, actually. This is why this guy is so good at this freaking game, about like the course correction that the game is taking. Like, we're at this crazy high point, we came down real low. Like, a lot of people would say this format is a very fair format, which I would generally agree with. And it seems like the game is course correcting. So yeah, Danny, what do you think?
Yeah, I definitely agree. To go back on one of my points, I think they're like I said earlier, that they're learning a lot from every set, right? They're like trying a little something like Surge or Unisons and seeing what's broken, like almost like how much they can get away with. But I think they've learned a lot at this point, and I personally would like them to. We definitely don't want anything more powerful than what we have, because the game's pretty wild right now, right? Like there's some very powerful interactions and cards going on, but I think they should like calm down on archetypes and just make generically good cards. I think that is the most fun way to deck build for me. And then more like keep the gimmicks to the leader and only a few cards, because I personally hate like 30 card like gimmick decks. You just play 30, it builds itself. It's
Yeah.
really boring to me. I think a lot of generic good cards, keep the power level the same, and but just like think of different, like I think there's some very interesting unisons that they could keep making. Like I know yellow right now is like Unison of Fury and Trunks. Those are very generic but like very good cards, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So yeah, my thing actually, I think they've done a good job recently of making good generic cards and decent archetypes. Like, I feel like actually it's split into colors. Like, I feel like yellow and blue are very non-archetypal. I feel like yellow and blue are very just like good stuff deck. Whereas I feel like green, black, and red is kind of like 50-50. Like, red could be good red card deck or like red archetype deck. I feel like those are like the archetype type of colors, if that makes sense. But that's just my opinion. But anyways, I do have a closing question, and this is like constructive criticism time. So if you guys were gonna talk directly to Bandai, this is the time to do it. So Big J, I'll start with you. Basically, my question is, with the way that the sets have been going, if there's anything you think Bandai can improve upon, let it be known now.
That's a good question. Honestly, like, I mean, I kind of brought it up before. I just think that like, and I don't know how they're doing stuff currently. Like, we have no information on that. But I just think like maybe just playtesting more, if they are playtesting, would help a little bit, because I think like we're definitely seeing these cars being very underpowered, and I'm not really too sure if that's them correcting the crazy power creep we've had, or if it's just like, just the archetypes they're building just aren't up to par. Like, really don't know. But like either way, I think they're doing a really good job right now. The current format I kind of enjoy a good bit. I think they're getting to a step where we can keep it balanced throughout the way, and just, keep going and just try and keep that marginal power creep, just keep doing the same things, just like maybe making, the archetypes maybe just slightly better so they can see like more play. But outside of that, I think they're doing a great job.
Awesome. All right, Danny, your turn. Open criticism, any improvements, and what do you think?
Yeah, just like what I said earlier, less theme-based decks. I think, like, I just thought this now, this kind of interesting. I feel like they print way too many leaders, right? Isn't it like sometimes like 8 to 10 brand new leaders, right?
Yeah, so it's usually 2 per color per set.
Yeah,
Black sometimes gets 1, but yeah, 2
yeah. I
per
feel
set.
like they 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 probably like just spend too much time trying to make a bunch of them, instead of they could like just only make like a couple. You know what I mean? They don't even have to have it in every color, because I think, you know there's hundreds of leaders that we don't use. We don't even touch anymore, right? It's kind of like pointless almost. I think quality over quantity on that. And then the other thing is definitely more generic cards. Like I said, I really dislike, the theme-based deck building. I pretty much I very rarely actually play theme decks because I find it just feels very boring, and deck building doesn't feel very interesting at that point. So yeah, but decent job so far. Meta's pretty cool.
Yeah, I definitely think Bandai's come a long way. Like, to be fair, we haven't had a tier 0 format in probably like 2 years. Like Vegex was like sort of borderline, but I think that was just a really strong tier 1 deck. But yeah, I think Bandai's been doing a great job. I definitely think, like, even though we're talking about this whole idea of like reverse power creep and things technically being a bit weaker, I think it's still generally a good thing, and I think there's still plenty of room for them to kind of correct and do just what Jordan was talking about with like the very, very marginal power creep instead of like the widespread power creep. But anyways, guys, I think we had a pretty cool discussion. I really appreciate you guys, giving us the time here. I hope you guys out there watching enjoyed as well. Of course, leave a comment letting us know what you think. Leave an idea for maybe the next chat topic, and we'll try to get that going for you guys. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next time.